Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be continuing on with my foundation review series, and we are taking a look at a cult favorite. And if you're someone who works in the makeup industry and you do a lot of wedding foundation, this is probably on your radar, and that is the Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. For years growing up, I read how this was like the best. This was like an Allure Award winner. All the celebrity makeup artists use this, and I wanted it. And this is a foundation I have used on and off for at least 5 years, maybe even longer, but I know for the last 5 years I've used this quite a lot. And to find out my thoughts and feelings and how I like to apply it, stay tuned and let's get right into the video. So to finish off my skin prep as far as skincare, I used a sunscreen. I use quite a bit off camera, but I don't think I've mentioned it on camera before. And this is a Korean sunscreen. It is called Cell Fusion C Dermatological Laboratories. This is the Laser Sunscreen 100 to SPF 50 plus PA of 3 plus. This is a combination mineral chemical sunscreen, and I love the sunscreen. I love the way it looks on my skin. It gives a very smooth finish. When it first goes on, it has a little bit of a white cast. I feel like if you are on the medium to dark side, this will definitely have more of an apparent cast, especially if you're using the adequate amount. But if you're gonna wear foundation on top, that's not a huge concern because that will neutralize it, but it just leaves the most beautiful velvety finish, and it doesn't leave the skin feeling dry, which can happen sometimes when there's the inclusion of a mineral filter. I did a multi-prime. So for my T-zone section of my face, I used my Tatcha liquid silk canvas. It's gonna help neutralize some of the oiliness, and it's also gonna help smooth texture a little bit. And it has a little bit of a pinky cast, which will help with the foundation because the foundation color is the closest one I have in the range, but it's a little yellow. And then for my cheeks and under eye area, Plump right back. This is such a great primer. For the drugstore, it is a little bit more expensive, but it gives a nice hydration. It has a little grip to the skin. It's very similar in a way to the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer, but I like this a little bit better, and it just feels very nourishing to the skin. The Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. I have had multiple bottles of this every year, and it feels like every time I get a different color, getting a little bit closer to the correct color for me. The first shade I ever owned in this was shade 4.25. It was either 4.25 or 4.5. I've had both of them. It was a little bit more pinky before I had my IPL done on my face and my neck. It was a better match because I had a lot more visible sun damage, and that was a great one for tying in my skin tone and the hyperpigmentation I was facing. As I treated that and that went away, I became a lot more pale. So I tried another shade. I think I tried like 2.5 or 2, and that was just really, really yellow. And then I noticed they launched a newer shade, which is what I have now. This is shade 1.5. This is a fair with a neutral undertone. With this foundation, it's a cult classic. It is beloved by many professional makeup artists and wedding makeup artists because it looks really, really nice on the skin. And even though it's called Luminous Silk, it is not too luminous. It is more on that natural luminous, or somewhere between a true natural finish and a dewy finish. It is that nice middle ground. So people who are a little bit oilier and they want a little bit of a glow, I think they'll still enjoy this. It's very watery, so give it a really good shade. And then I always like to start with one pump on the back of my hand. I'm using a little bit of a different brush today, and I'm using my It for Ulta. This is the Airbrush Complexion Perfection number 115. It is more of like your flat top kabuki with a little bit of an angle, and I like this because this foundation, it's beautiful on the skin, but where the color still isn't perfect for me, I like using a more flat brush and then using this to really spread my product out, almost in a sense applying it like a glaze. I can take a small amount and really spread it out. With this type of application and using a brush like this, these flatter, more dense brushes, they are quite prone to absorbing product, even though this is a synthetic hair. With the density of the bristles, you are going to still have some of the product that gets kind of sucked up by the brush. Not always bad, especially if you're going for more of a kind of skin-like finish. It can sometimes help aid in the foundation looking a little bit more skin-like. Now, where this foundation is a little bit more yellow than my body, it works because my face has more topical redness. As I've mentioned in other videos, I do struggle with rosacea thanks to my at-home routine and then some in-office kind of brightening treatments like IPL and laser resurfacing. It's helped to really kind of combat that ruddiness I can get. But I still have some redness. Foundation like this that pulls slightly more yellow will help to neutralize some of that redness and make me more in line with my neck and my body. And a shade like that is really visible on my chin where I have more redness. And out of that one pump, I might have used right at half, just a very, very tiny amount. And I'm going back over to further thin out. And by doing this kind of press and drag motion, it's really going to help this product press into the skin and spread the pigment. So I'm getting more of that veil of coverage that I personally like. So here on half of my face is about half a pump of foundation. You can see, I would say this is a sheer to light coverage. I wouldn't say it's quite a light coverage. You can still see redness poking through. You can still see some hyperpigmentation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna pick up just a tiny amount, just barely any on my brush. And I'm going to layer this a little bit. So I'm gonna start by pressing some there, pick up a tiny bit more and apply into my forehead where I want coverage. And then I'm gonna go back to that first area. I'm not gonna go too crazy with layering this foundation because I am gonna use a concealer. I like my concealer to do the heavy lifting. If you wanna know more about how I like to apply foundation, I have just began uploading some videos of a 7-part how to apply makeup for beginners series, and the first video was all about foundation. So if you want to know how to perfect your base in detail, there is a video dedicated strictly to that, and that will be linked in the description box in the title cards. So there we go. There is one half, and now we can go through and do the other side of my face. I always find when applying foundation, once I get one side on and I kind of figure out the look I'm going for that day, because a lot of people's foundation wants change a little bit day to day as we notice different things about our skin. And if you're someone like me who uses different sunscreens can have different effects on the skin, as well as the primer you choose. So that's why I always like to think about the products I'm gonna use in a conjunction, because each one will influence the other one to act a little bit differently. I'm gonna take just a dot, not even a quarter pump, just a little bit. I'm gonna work with the point of my brush, get a little bit more coverage through here, right through here, and on my chin. And then pick up that little bit of residual. I'm gonna stipple right over. Okay, so here is a even coat of the Armani Luminous Silk in shade 1.5 all over the skin. I have been using the Armani Luminous Silk Concealer. This either launched last year or the year before. I can't recall if this launched in 2020 or 2021. When I picked this up, I think I got the lightest shade, which is shade 2. For me, it is a little yellow. And if I try to use it under my eyes on its own, where I have more of this kind of blue-purple discoloration, if I add just this concealer on top, it can look a little green. It can almost be like I've taken my under-eye discoloration from blue-purple to green. Because if we think about what happens when we mix yellow and blue together, they create green. So I like to correct that. And my favorite corrector is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Corrector. I don't use this a lot because I don't often need it, but when I do need a corrector, this is my favorite. So there's the corrector on. I honestly can leave it here, but I want that little bit more coverage just to kind of even out here because I don't have a lot of coverage through my skin, which is the kind of look I'm going for. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my Luminous Silk Concealer in shade 2. I'm gonna concentrate this right out here. And you can already see compared to my skin tone, this is a little bit more yellow. So I want the bulk of my coverage with this concealer under the eyes. I'm gonna let it set there for a moment and I'm gonna blend out these other areas. With your liquid and cream products, if you let them set for a moment, they will start to dry down and you'll get a little bit more coverage out of them. If you don't want as much coverage, blend it out right away and they'll be a little bit more liquidy, so they'll spread a little bit easier. And then with my under eye area in this concealer, before I do my thorough blend, I'll use my brush just to pat and pull. That way it's still gonna dry down a little bit more, resulting in me getting a little bit more coverage, but it will be a little bit more thin and more distributed now. So there's foundation and concealer applied. In my opinion, there is a very subtle disconnect between the foundation and the concealer. Generally, concealers are going to be more pigment-rich products. Even if they're in the same kind of range like this, generally, this is going to offer a little bit more coverage than your foundation, as even since they're used in conjunction. But what I find with this is I find this does have a little bit more pigment. I would say it has about 25% more coverage than the foundation because it's still very thin, very spreadable. If you were traveling lightly and you had a concealer that was a good match for you, you could easily throw this into your bag and this would be easier to travel with than something like this. I do find this is a little bit more drying in comparison to the foundation. So if I'm going to use it on my eyes like I did today, I need to make sure this area is really, really prepped, or it can accentuate dryness I'm prone to getting right in this inner area. And I always like to use my finger just to go through and press, especially when layering a concealer and a corrector, because it's going to help them meld a little bit easier. I'm going to finish off the rest of my makeup off camera and I will be right back to give you my final review on the Armani Luminous Silk foundation. So let's get into the details of this foundation. Here in Canada, the Armani Luminous Silk foundation retails for $82 for 30 mils of product. And that breaks down to $2.73 per mil. So definitely a luxury price point foundation. And this foundation is available in 40 shades. Now, I don't know if this is a new addition or if this is something that's been going around for a little bit, but I noticed on the Sephora website, it mentioned that this is an oil-free foundation, which is something I didn't know. This is a beautiful foundation. I really, really enjoy it. I've used it on and off for years. To pick up this bottle, I was actually influenced by one of my friends back home who said this was like her new holy grail foundation. And it's one that I had used on and off, couldn't find a shade, kind of forgot about it. And then I repurchased it. I really like it. However, this for me is just, it's not a holy grail. It wears beautifully. You get a decent longevity. Like this normally lasts me for about a solid 8 hours, which you can enhance it with a primer. Like if I pair it with my Tatcha Liquid Silk Canvas, I can easily get a 10 to 12 hour wear out of this foundation, no problems. Even though it is called Luminous Silk, I do not find it is overly luminous or overly greasy. If we look at my skin where I applied my Tatcha primer through my T-zone and then the NYX primer on my cheeks, where the NYX primer has a little bit more of a luminous finish and then my forehead has more of a matte finish. We can see where both areas have a slightly different finish, and that is due to the finish that the primer's left behind. So I wouldn't say the luminous name in the foundation, I wouldn't let that be a determining factor, as it's quite adaptable and it works well on all different skin types. Throughout the years, as trying other things, this has definitely been kind of knocked down. It is, if you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, this would have been in my top 5. But now, thanks to things like my one to Chanel or the newer L'Oreal True Match or even the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream, those are all foundations that I have put into my like top 5 foundations. They are ones I enjoy more than this. I'm gonna definitely keep using this. I like it. When I was a freelance makeup artist, I did more weddings. I used this a lot in my freelance kit because it always performed well and it looks beautiful in photography. Now let's jump over to the Armani Luminous Silk Concealer. I have this in shade 2. This retails for $50 for 12 mil of product, which breaks down to $4.17 per mil. This is currently available in 20 shades and shade 2 is the lightest. However, if you look on like the Sephora shade chart, shade 2 is darker and more kind of peachy than the next shade up. So for me to get my ideal tone in this, I would need to mix it with something else to get the correct tone, or use a corrector like I did today. This is a decent concealer. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's not one of my favorites. I'll keep using it, and when it either expires or I run out, I don't feel like I would repurchase it. For $50, this is just not one I love. In a way, it's kind of like the Armani Power Fabric. They're both nice concealers. I just don't love them. And they are both in shade 2, and the shade 2 in the Luminous Silk is much lighter and it does have a slightly more peachy quality. The Power Fabric Concealer is about a full shade darker than the shade 2 in this one, and it is more of a true warm yellowy undertone. I keep my favorite makeup in little bins so I can grab and go. And in my desk, the things that are here are my top favorites of things I love and enjoy. And I keep this little bin with my favorite concealers. And like some of my favorite concealers I have in here are my Maybelline Age Rewind, my Lancome Efficernes. I have a Korean concealer from the brand Luna, which I really love. e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. I have my NYX Bear With Me concealer and my little mini size of the Tarte Creaseless Concealer. These are my favorite concealers. These are the ones I can use, I can mix, and they never let me down. And I would purchase those over and over and over compared to the Armani. That also segues me into a little idea. If you would like to know in a separate video what are the complexion products I keep like in my top shelf drawers, let me know, because I would definitely share that with all of you. And I think some of you might be surprised by what has made it into this drawer and then which of the complexion products live off the side in my big kind of drawer system that I keep my overflow or the less reach for products in. Let me know if you would like to see that in the comments down below. Who is the Armani Luminous Silk Foundation for? In my opinion, it's for everyone. If you are very, very dry, you might need to use a hydrating primer. If you're very oily, I would definitely make sure you prep your skin well, make sure your moisturizer or SPF has more of a matte finish, and then follow through with a more mattifying primer, as this does have more of a natural luminous finish. But if you're someone who is very, very oily, this might become greasy looking by mid to late wear. And if you are someone who wants a very, very full coverage, you can build this up. I feel like this is a light to medium buildable foundation. However, I would say it does not build up to a true full coverage. It always has a little bit of a sheerness, a little bit of a veil-like property to it. You can get a pretty solid medium coverage. And if you have this and this, I feel like you can layer them together and it will cover most things. If you have a very, very dark spot of hyperpigmentation or a tattoo, even this wouldn't really be able to cover it. Which now leads us on to the Armani Luminous Silk Concealer. Who is this for? I would say this is for anyone who doesn't need anything over medium coverage within a concealer. For me, I do not feel like this is a full coverage concealer, and I feel like it is more dry feeling on the skin compared to the foundation. At $50 for a small bottle, I do like that this is easy to travel with. I like that you can substitute this as a foundation unless you are just really, really in love with Armani, or this is a formula that is just your top shelf, because we all have very different skins. Even though something isn't my personal favorite, everything's gonna work a little bit different for everyone. So for me, this is a easy pass, and this is still a good foundation. It's just not my #1 favorite. By no means is it bad, it's just not the best. For me, for the kind of $80 price range, if I want to spend something around the same cost, I'm gonna go for my YSL All Hours. This is more of a natural matte finish, and if I want something more luminous and I want to spend an extra $10 to $15, I'd go for the one to Chanel. This is just my favorite. If I'm gonna go luxury, I would go for those over the Armani foundation. If you have tried out this foundation, I would love to know your thoughts and see what's your favorite way to use this. It's something that I feel like is very flexible, feel like a lot of people will enjoy, and let me know your favorite way to use it in the comment section down below. If you found this video enjoyable, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more foundation reviews, and to see the rest of the makeup or beginner series coming up in the next few weeks. Share this video with a friend that you think may enjoy it, and I will see you all later. Bye, y'all.